In this video, we're going to show you how OpsGen can ingest a spreadsheet that's full of departmental data or any data really, and turn that up into a fully stood up API in Microsoft Azure. So first of all, we're going to start with our spreadsheet. And we have a spreadsheet here, sales by region for the month of July 2015. And it's just a regular Excel spreadsheet that just rows and columns. I believe there's 88,000 rows of data, and this could have come from some homegrown system perhaps, or something like that. It's got an order date, region, rep, the item that was sold, the units, the total unit cost, and the total is extrapolated across. So in this situation, perhaps we've got this data that's in this spreadsheet, and we want to make use of it. That might be integrated with other enterprise applications, and so we're going to surface that information through an API. First thing I do is I click on New, because I'm creating a new API, and we'll call this our July Sales API. Select it from the list, and now you'll see that we can start building the properties of the API and what settings and security we're going to want to apply to it. So this is going to be a very simple demonstration, and all we're going to do is we're going to actually just use that spreadsheet. So I'm going to click on the import button, and then I'm going to select that same spreadsheet file. OpsGen right now is interrogating the spreadsheet, trying to determine what comprises, most importantly, the columns, because what it's going to do with those columns is it's going to turn those into fields for the object, which will make more sense here in a minute. I can leave the object name as the name of the spreadsheet, or I can change it. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that first row of data, that's actually our header. That's actually a header. And so now you can see how the data from the spreadsheet falls in under each header. It starts to look a little bit more like something we can use. Clicking on the next button, we're going to see that it's taken each column and it's going to turn that into a field. The field's going to have a data type. Right now we're just going to leave this as text, but we could change that to numeric. It could be a calendar, a date entry, or whatever. So we're just going to leave it like this. We're going to include it in the API. Include all of them in the API. I could set it to false, and it would only include those fields that I've requested to be part of the API. I click the import button now. You'll see that it's created an object here. So under my API objects, I've got that as my object. It does have the ability to assign an icon. So for the documentation that gets created for the API, we can have an icon for some window dressing there. This is going to be the only object in our API, so we're going to include it. We are not going to make it read. We are going to make it read only, and we're going to put security on it. Now, as I said earlier, each column in that API has now become a field. It has a data type. We're going to include it in the API, and really that's set out the initial definition of the data portion of this. Now we could import another spreadsheet. That would be part of the same API. We could just create a new object from manually. But again, for the simple purposes, we're gonna leave this as just the spreadsheet. Next tab I have is my settings. Now we support two different types right now. You can have it managed, which means it'll get fully stood up in Azure, or it can be downloadable, in which case it's going to create the API for me, and then I can download that as a Visual Studio project, which I can then use and do whatever I want with, really. We offer 3 plans at the moment, where we have a freemium plan, a standard plan, and a premium hosted plan. There's more information on that available from the OpsGen website. We're going to host this in the central US data center. We're going to have a defined users only data strategy. We have some other settings here where we can say we're going to back up daily. The spreadsheet data is probably fairly static, so I could probably change that to monthly, but we'll leave it at this for now. And as I make calls through my API, we can set the level of logging that we want to have. So we can have full logging, verbose logging, or medium, or just very light logging. So we'll save those settings. Custom operations is another feature of the OpsGen product, where you can define methods for your API that is more than just data. access and basic CRUD data operations. So, I could include some averaging, some calculations, something here that perhaps just doesn't come straight out of the data. And that's going to be the subject of another video. So we're just going to leave that for the moment. The next thing I'm going to want to do here is I'm going to want to assign security. So I'm going to go and I'm actually going to I'm going to create two roles, an admin role and a user role. And then I'm going to create two users. I'm going to create an admin user. Then I'm going to create just a regular user. And now I'm going to go back to my permissions. I'm going to select that object. And admin's going to have full CRUD operations. But user, when someone logs in through the API as a user, they're only going to be able to read. I'm going to save all this information. And now that final tab is my publish. Now, what we've done here to this point, we've created a data object by importing a spreadsheet. We've set up some settings for our API, where we want it hosted, how we want it managed. We have not created any custom operations. We have defined security, and we're now going to build. So when I click the build button, it's started the publish. And what's going on right now is it's taking all that information that I've defined for my API, and now it's started to build the web app. We've started our deployment to Azure. What it's doing right now is it's actually using MS Build, taking all the data we've provided, using MS Build to create the project, standing it up in Azure, building all the necessary Azure infrastructure required to support the API. Now it's created the web app. Creating the web app, I should say. It's deploying it. And one thing you should note as this is still completing is we can create different versions of our API. So this is the first version, of course, so we're on V1, and I can keep iterating through this and republishing as I make changes. When I'm ready to create a new version, I click that button, and then I can start creating a completely new version of my API. And so I might have mobile apps running on an old version, and then other mobile apps taking advantage of any changes I've made in the new version. And now the publish has been completed, and from start to finish, it looks like it's taken about 2 minutes. You'll notice now that this area has been refreshed. Right now I have the link to my API. And we also have the ability to download the source code, as I said before, and any SQL scripts that were created. So if I wanted to, I could download the source code, download the SQL script, and go apply that either against my own version of Azure, or perhaps it's an on-premise version of SQL Server that I want to apply this all to. But for this demo, I'm going to click on the link button. It's going to open up a new browser page. And in that browser page, we should have access to the API, the fully documented API. Granted, it's only for one object, but I think it kind of gets the point across here. We don't have any custom operations. But we're going to go look at the object. And you'll see that it's created this object here. There's the object. There's all the available fields. Fully documented API. We have add, update, delete. Any sample code. We'll run some of this sample code actually. Let's just return all the fields. There is 88,000 rows, and so this query may take a second or two to process. but once it does, you can see it comes back there fully with all the data. I can also run, if I want to, another operation here, and perhaps that might be to look at a filtered set here. So let's move this. I'm actually just going to adjust the screen just slightly so I can get at my bar here, and I can just say that I only want, let's say, the region I think was one of my fields, and starting with E for East, let's say. This is all, of course, OData query that's happening here, and here's returning the data set, and you'll see we've got the region starting with E or East. I could have used any filter I wanted, but I think that gets the point across. And so what's important to understand here, what we've done is we've created a fully stood up API in Azure. We've provisioned the website. We've provisioned any other Azure infrastructure that's been necessary to support this API. And we've actually made it available and surfaced the data so that someone that needs to consume this data can now just call a standard, make OData queries, and be able to access the data. And so that's the end of this presentation on OpsGen, where we believe there's a better way to build API connectivity for high-value enterprise, mobile, IoT, and startup applications on-premise and in the cloud. Thank you.